Hey, welcome to episode 6 of West Coast Biased. I'm Andrew Nemec, joined as always by Jason Suke and Nemec. Jason, we have football, real football. It ended in a
Well,
tie. It was a preseason game, but it's football.
it's somewhat football, right? Preseason football. Hey, when you looked across the league, you look at like what Cincinnati did, dude. Cincinnati wasn't messing around. They went like Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, let's go. So we did get meaningful football. And I think you're going to see that. It sounds like over the course of the preseason, some teams are going to give this thing a real crack. We thought the Raiders were going to do it, and then not so much. But I mean, you saw real football last night, and we're going to see more tonight.
I think it's interesting that the Bengals have started slow offensively the last few years and are notorious for not playing their starters throughout the preseason. Week one, and even in a week in preseason where most teams don't really play their starters, they gave Burrow and Chase some run, and Burrow and Chase connected for a touchdown. And poor Keely Ringo, the defensive back there, was so overmatched and overran the play. And Jamar Chase just turns on him. And
there's two sides to every. Sean McVay started this a couple years ago when he basically just said, "Hey, none of our guys are going to play in preseason," and the NFL is a copycat league, and so that kind of became the sexy trend in injuries. But this is what I hate, like. Rashawn Slater gets hurt, which I mean we can talk about when we get into the AFC West preview, but it's killer, right? Like the guy's an All-Pro, one of the 4 best tackles in football. He just signed into a $100+ million deal, blows out a knee, the tendon, and he's done. So that stinks. But that happens in practice, and we're like, oh, that's just what it is. If that would have happened on the 3rd series of the first preseason game, now we killed Jim Harbaugh.
You're
Why
right.
was he in
You're
there?
right.
The bottom line is, and look, the NFL is a 100% injury rate sport. It just is. It's not if you're going to get hurt. It's how often you get hurt, and it's how serious. Okay, it is. I think Devontae Adams was talking about this in regards to Travis Hunter. He said, "Dude, you can't play both ways because you'll play 3 years." So this is a 100% sport, injury sport. So all this stuff about whether we should have been in or who plays or who doesn't, and that's fine. You can all have your own philosophy. But the bottom line is, dude, guys are going to get hurt, whether it's in practice, whether it's in games. You mitigate it the best you can. You try to make smart decisions. You go on an individual basis. But this idea that there's a right or a wrong way to play your players or don't play your players, or how many preseason snaps, or to the end of the year, like when you're not playing for anything, does Kansas City or Detroit, do they play players? At the end of the day, it's ridiculous because it's an unpredictable sport and everyone's going to get hurt. You do the best you can and you roll the dice. But I hate when we criticize based on outcome. No one's criticizing Jim Harbaugh today because Slater got hurt. If it would have happened in a preseason game, now we have to have some stupid conversation where Stephen A. Smith and Darren Orlovsky get up there and yell at each other about whether or not he should have been in the game. Welcome to the game of football. People get hurt.
Yep. Yeah, it's a really good point. We're going to preview the NFC West and the AFC West today. There's so much going on, one, in both of those divisions, but two, they're the West Coast teams, and this is the West Coast bias. But I do want to start with the Seahawks preseason game last night. A Boise State running back absolutely went off as we expected, but it was George Halani and not Ashton Genty. A lot to like, frankly, from the Seahawks, in my opinion, particularly from some of their rookies that have been much discussed in the last few weeks and much hyped really since the draft.
Yeah, I thought Zabel played really well, which they needed him to. You're right. Let's just call it what it is. This O-line was bad last year. You can make the argument. I think I mean, bottom third doesn't begin to describe it. You can make the argument that outside maybe the Houston Texans, this was the worst offensive line, depending on what metric you look at. It was garbage. Yep. So you're hoping that your 2 tackles stay healthy and that Cross has a little better year. I don't think either one of those bookend tackles is like the greatest, but you needed Zabel to come in and solidify it. And I think you saw some athleticism night with this new run scheme that they're gonna put in. So I think you really like the way the O-line played. Darnold had all day to throw. You're seeing some of the max protect stuff they're going to do off of that. And so I just think that, to me, the run game and the pass protection, I thought last night for Seattle, you have to be really excited about. And then the guy, we've been talking about him a little bit, and he's been getting buzz in camp, and we didn't even know if he was going to play this year coming off the knee injury, but that was the kid out of Colorado State, Torrey Horton, who was supposed to be like maybe a 2nd, 3rd round pick, blows his knee out, goes in the 5th round. And they were saying, hey, man, in camp, this kid's making plays. And sure enough, what shows up last night? Dude, and so you add him into a mix where you feel like you got your number one in Smith and Jigba. You feel pretty good about Cooper Kupp kind of being the wily veteran. But I mean, no offense to Marquez Vanderling, but like, I think there's a chance that Horton ends up playing a big role. From what I'm hearing up there, they're saying that last night was indicative of what this kid has shown all offseason.
Right. And I thought the rookies from top to bottom looked good. I thought Gray Zabel played really well. Nick Emanwari, he was hyped as a younger Jamal Adams. He certainly played like that. He certainly played like that last night, where a lot of stuff in the box. He cleaned something up on the backside on a run with Genty, and he got a tackle for loss. That's all good. We knew he could do that because he's 6'3", 220 plus.
He's a heat-seeking missile.
He looks like a linebacker. So the fact that he can do the linebacker things is kind of status quo. That's kind of what we thought. What we need to see and what Seahawks fans want to see and need to see is how he looks in coverage. We talked about a few years ago, the Cardinals drafted Isaiah Simmons, and everybody went, oh, this is the new defensive weapon. This is Weapon X. He's a linebacker. He's a safety. He can play corner. And the Niners put him in an absolute blender in his first NFL game. And he couldn't really do anything, and he really hasn't caught on. What separates those big athletic linebackery safeties from guys who really pan out and are special is the ability to cover. So, yes, it was good to see him make some plays. We still kind of have an unknown there, but, you like the flashes. Torrey Horton, we talked about. I love Torrey Horton. He was a sleeper for me in the draft. I also like Ricky White out of UNLV, who they got later. But the key for me, depth at running back. I believe they now feel good about 3 of their running backs. And that's a good thing when Walker and Charbonnet have been banged up at times. If you feel really good about 3, and by the way, Damian Martinez was drafted and looks like a solid potential rookie later, previously at Oregon State, then bounced to Miami. But he's a good player too. They've got a good stable there. I like that. And then Jalen Milroe. We saw the flashes. Great athlete, can spin it. Nearly threw a bad pick, but no, it's dropped. So he looked fine. He looked exactly how I thought he would look. He's really athletic. He's got a big arm. There's a lot of development there left in the tank. And he probably needs to be the third string guy. If you want to run him in some packages, maybe this year, fine. Other than that, let's treat him how Anthony Richardson should have been treated in Indianapolis. Let's develop you for a year and a half before you ever really see the field, if it all comes together. But I thought there was a lot to like in a preseason week 1 tie with the Raiders. If I'm a Seahawks fan, I'm really happy with a number of things, including, by the way, that front looked dominant in the first couple of series, and that was as advertised.
Yeah, the Raiders weren't running, and Genty may get some crap, dude. That guy had nowhere to run. Twice he got the ball and he had to make a spin move as he took the handoff. So Seattle was crushing it up front. You love the 2 picks from the secondary. And then you mentioned Holani, the other back out of Boise State, 8 touches, 81 yards, a touchdown. I thought you saw some nice things from Arroyo there at the tight end. This is, if you're Seattle, preseason game, don't buy too much, into anything. It's the preseason, but if you're a Seattle fan, I don't think this could have gone much better. I don't care about the 23-23 tie, whatever. To me, I think you saw what you needed to see to feel good about where this team is headed. And like I said, I'm bullish on it. I think this is a playoff team, and I saw some really good flashes. But I mean, ultimately, this will come down to the defense is going to be fine. How does the O-line play, and how does Sam Darnold play once we get into big boy football? Because honestly, the Raiders didn't look good at all. I think if you're having this conversation and we're doing a Raiders podcast, I think today we're going, ugh, as opposed to, but Geno Smith, 3 plays or whatever it was, 3 passes. So a little bit different there, but very much a passing grade for Seattle from all the young guys and kind of the new, the continuity that you wanted to see.
That's all you're looking for. You're looking for your rookies to flash. You're looking for your key weaknesses to look a little bit stronger, and you're looking for everybody to be healthy. And if you're trying to take away anything like our second unit in the secondary looks strong, you don't know, because the Raiders were playing 3rd and 4th string guys at times. So the key takeaways are very positive. Switching gears, tell me if you heard this one before. The 49ers hold a joint practice. It's really their first live action. Yeah. We had a key injury potentially along the defensive line. You had interior pressure that gave Brock Purdy a hard time. You had a less than fully healthy offense trying to find its groove early. It's a joint practice. A couple of years ago, the Niners had a not great joint practice against the Raiders, and everybody went, oh my God, the Raiders are better than the Niners. The Niners made the Super Bowl that year. There's not a lot you can take from it.
No.
To me, Sue, I am a little bit worried about Mikael Williams' knee. They think it's a hyperextension. They hope it's just a hyperextension. But this kind of highlights the issue we talked about. When you're reliant on rookies, when you're reliant on a lack of depth and guys just playing, plug and play, they have to stay healthy. And there's a different level of physicality in the NFL. The Niners cannot afford to lose much of anybody, let alone their first-round pick in the first joint practice.
No, and I guess the initial reports, but you were saying you followed the Niners closely over the years, that you hate to hear. We think it's one thing, but further evaluation, because they did try to come out and say that they thought that the Williams knee was just a hyperextension. They didn't think it was that bad, but they did do the dreaded, we'll see how it goes. And then, it's like the Christian McCaffrey, calf. He's got some calf soreness, and I'm not going to play the rest of the year. Juwan Jennings, right? It's like, so you don't give him the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, you can't afford any injuries. But early in camp, when you've been hearing that that Williams and CJ West, I flat out heard that CJ West is their best interior defensive lineman. He was a guy that you were really high on, the 4th round pick. So, it's great to hear those things, but I just feel like the Niners every year, it just comes down to, can you stay healthy? If they can keep their guys on the field, we know this team is talented. Hearing great things out of D. Winters filling in as kind of the new starting linebacker there. I know they've been searching for a replacement for that for years, that have never really settled on, again, because of injuries. And now with Greenlaw being gone for good, sounds like he's ready to kind of step up, and he's a 6th round pick from a couple years ago, and that he's ready to go. So you're hearing positive things, but you can't have Williams banged up. You can't have Jennings banged up. You can't have Ayuk starting on the pup. You can't. They can't afford these sorts of things. They have to find a way to stay healthy. And I just feel that has been, if you had to have a microcosm of the Shanahan run here, it's one play short in the Super Bowl, an overthrow, and you can't block Philadelphia. You can't block one Kansas City Chiefs defensive lineman. Seriously, think about that. One overthrow and one horrible play from your right guard and tackle.
Your rotational right guard, Spencer Burford. God.
Yeah. And then they bitched at each other. But yeah, that, and then injuries. Every time that they get hurt, and the season goes to the pot. And when they're healthy, they're as good as anyone in the NFL. And I still am with you. I'm not certain that their ceiling is what it was in the past. I think their ceiling can obviously still be the playoffs. I think they can still be a contending team, but I think this division is a murderer's row. I think Seattle is going to be infinitely better. I think the Rams, if Matthew Stafford stays healthy, are as good a team as we have in the NFL. I think that's a Super Bowl team. And a lot of people think the Cardinals are coming. So I just don't know. I just don't know top to bottom when I look at this roster. I just don't know if this is the roster that we've seen in some of the past really good Niner teams. So playoff team, yes, but I'm not certain the ceiling is the Super Bowl.
Well, for me, the joint practice, the Broncos absolutely dominated on both sides of the ball. There was interior pressure. Everyone said coming into this offseason, the Niners have to address their interior offensive line, and they have to address their front 7 because they couldn't stop the run and they couldn't stop an interior pass rush. They decided to go all chips in, their chips in the front 7. Even getting a guy like Bryce Huff. Every avenue they had, they went to address the front 7. They didn't address the interior. Even after losing Aaron Banks to the Packers, they didn't address it. So you either really believe that everybody takes a step up, or if you're Kyle Shanahan, you're saying, I'm okay with having probably the 22nd best interior in the league, ish, give or take, and we'll work around it. And they did figure some things out in the second half of practice. It sounds like Ricky Pearsall is continuing to emerge. I loved him as a draft pick for the 49ers. I thought that was a really nice fit. People tuned out the Niners because they weren't a playoff team last year. Pearsall really came on the last 2 weeks. Now, that's not against everybody's very best, but when you have 100 yards, 80 yards and a tutty, you can play. You can play in this league if you can do that. So some flashes there. That's a good sign. But all in all, from the Niners, it's kind of those kind of same trends we worry about: interior pressure and an injury in the front 7. It's just like, this ominous feeling of more of the same for the Niners.
2 things. One, Denver has 2 of the best units in football, offensive line and defensive line.
No doubt.
It's really good. So you are getting thrown into the deep end. Your first real live bullets and it's against that crew, that's a wrecking crew, both sides of the ball. Denver's good, plain and simple. Denver is a legitimate team. And then the other side, and I think this is kind of indicative of Shanahan. And we talked a little bit about the Seahawks run scheme, which is, again, this little kind of outside zone thing. And we can get more into this later. I know someone asked a question to explain that, but you can kind of mask if you're an under center, the benefit of being under center, the benefit of being a play action team, the benefit of being a run heavy team is what? You can hide offensive deficiencies. Right. You just can't.
Well, let's get into that question though real quick. Let me read, because if it fits in here, it fits in here. Let's just do it. Josh Goodenough messaged us. Could you guys break down the zone blocking scheme that the Seahawks will be using? What are the benefits, drawbacks, etc., and how can personnel impact its effectiveness? By the way, if you want to ask a question, you can email us at sukenemec@gmail.com.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you want to get into, the weeds of this thing, whether you're talking about a gap scheme or you're talking about a zone scheme in the NFL, right? If we're talking about like a gap scheme, we're thinking bigger offensive linemen, a lot of like combo blocks, duo blocks, and we're knocking people off the line of scrimmage, right? We're going to be more physical than you, and we're just going to get up into your face. We're going to knock you off. We're going to pull a guard. We're going to create gaps that way, right? You run a lot of power G, and we're pulling guys, and that's how we're creating seams. We're knocking your ass off the ball. We're pulling someone, kicking out, and there's our lane. This is how we run. One cut, go. Right.
It's a pinpoint attack. It's more of a pinpoint attack. Yeah.
Yes. Like if I'm running power, or if I'm running G, I know my point of attack is going to be right here. I'm running to the 7 hole, I'm running to the 6, I'm running off the outside, ass of my tackle. This is where I'm going. Right.
And in duo, I'm reading the linebacker and cutting based on that, but it's the same idea.
More of a power run scheme. We're running a zone scheme. We don't need guys that weigh 350 pounds. We're not necessarily asking everyone to knock defensive linemen off the ball. We're all moving in unison. We called it elephants on parade when I was in Denver with Alex Gibb. Elephants on parade.
Yep.
So when I snap the ball, we're all stepping with our right foot, and it just looks like a parade. Every old lineman looks exactly the same. We're all going to the right.
Yep.
And it's not necessarily even taking a man. We're taking an area. Like we were taught, like I'm a center, and if we're running front side and someone cuts behind me, not my responsibility. If the linebacker wants to run behind me, I let him go and I keep climbing, right? So we go first level to second level. We're all on parade. We're all going outside. And now my back says, okay, this is my aiming point out here. And this may be where my aiming point is starting, but that play can cut back anywhere. Most of the time we're running these big zone schemes. The big runs come on cuts. It's basically, where do you want to play as a defense, right? I'm going to take what you do. If you want to be a fast flow team and pursue it, I'm taking cutback. If you want to start cheating and try to shoot gaps, I'm sprinting to the front side. And so I don't need to be as physical. I don't need the big maulers. I need people that get in people's way. I want athletes that are able to move, think on their feet. And the beauty part about that is it pairs with the play action scheme, right? If everything I do, so I call it, like, you think about it as like horizontal pressure, right? We always talk about vertical pressure in offenses where we're trying to take the top off, right? We're trying to get people to back off and less to throw underneath. We talk about horizontal pressure. We're trying to stretch a defense sideline to sideline. And when we stretch sideline to sideline, what does that cause? Space, gaps.
Right.
I can make everyone run. Now I'm just telling my running back, I'm telling my old lineman, I just need a seam. And that seam may be outside the numbers, it may be on the backside. I'm looking for that. And when I pair it with that, if I make my run game look like my pass game, and you're forced to respect that, and this is where quarterbacks like Sam Darnold or Geno Smith can really thrive. Not the most athletic guys in the world, not 7 steps and throw the ball downfield. Here's my play action game, suck up the linebackers, and you can pair it. To me, it's the best scheme in the NFL for play action pass.
Right.
Because everything looks the same.
Yes.
You can say that it may be limited as far as big plays go, stretching the ball downfield, but you can really mask deficiencies of an O-line. And I just think it can create a lot of problems for a defense because everything ends up looking the same.
In a really, really simple, like way overly simple way to think about it, to me, zone is about creating space in the sense and outside. So you force people to cover you sideline to sideline, and that old adage of playing in a phone booth, To me, that's more gap scheme. We're going to be more physical. We're going to come right at you. Now, that's way oversimplified, but if you just want it in the very simple layman's terms, it's creating space with your run game versus playing in a phone booth. And that's just comes down to philosophy, right? I mean, it doesn't mean one is better than the other. That's the beauty of football. It's a philosophy thing. With the Seahawks, last year they ran a lot of gap stuff. This year, they are switching to Clint Kubiak's system, which is along the Shanahan tree. It's that outside zone. So in this year's draft, it really broke for them well because the two interior linemen that everybody was high on coming into this draft were Tyler Booker, who went to the Cowboys, and Gray Zabel. Well, Tyler Booker is the ultimate gap scheme.
He's like 300. He's like 340 pounds. He's just this monster that can't move that.
Can't move. So I listened to a number of draft podcasts. I watched him for the Niners. He was a cross off for me because he doesn't fit their system, which means he wouldn't have been a fit for the Seahawks either. The Cowboys go ahead and take him. And there were folks, I think it was Daniel Jeremiah, who said he's talked to folks in the league who they have Tyler Booker as the number one interior lineman. They grade him out as a future Pro Bowler. And there are other people who see him as a late day two guy because he doesn't fit their system at all. Yeah. So Booker goes to the Cowboys. That's perfect for the Seahawks. They go get a versatile guy in Gray Zabel. And we saw Gray Zabel in that scheme look really good. He's got good hands. He knows where to go with his blocks. He's got good eyes. He's disciplined. And once he gets his mitts on you, he's hard to shed. He had a great first day, first appearance in the NFL. That was great. The other thing that's interesting is last year, doing scouting stuff, not for the Niners, but to see who the Niners might draft. I thought Dominic Pooney and Christian Haynes were the two guards I really liked. I talked to you about it last year. Pooney obviously went on and had a stellar year. Haynes got lost in the shuffle in Seattle. Well, part of that is he's an outside zone guy through and through. And so he was forced to play in a gap system, and he just wasn't as powerful. He couldn't do it. I look for him, and I've said this before in a previous pod, I look for him to take a step up. I was watching him a little last night. He looks better. And he does. It's not head and shoulders better. You don't go, now we've got a Pro Bowler just like Pooney. But he took a big step forward where now if he's, your second guard or even just your swing guard, you feel a lot better about it. I really like what I saw from Haynes. And again, what are the benefits of a system when you switch? If your personnel fits, they can elevate half a letter grade, a full letter grade, just because, hey, these guards finally are in this position where they're not going man-to-man against a 330-pound defensive tackle. They're fighting space, and they know how to play in space.
Well, and two, let's look. Sam Darnold he doesn't do well under pressure, right? It's not his cup of tea. And this scheme, you can run some max protect stuff. Last year when Kubiak was in New Orleans, remember for the first, New Orleans was not supposed to be good last year. The O-line was supposed to be really bad. Even remember for about 3-4 weeks, their offense was humming. They were putting up 40 points.
Historic numbers, yeah.
And no one could figure out because they were running max protect. They were running two guys out in the route. Now eventually that got exposed and the whole thing blew up. But this is one of those things that you can't do this. You saw it last night. A couple of the big plays that Seattle had, they had two guys out on the route.
Yep.
So if I've got a young quarterback, and I know that's not Sam Darnold, we're talking about Drew Lock, but if I've got a quarterback here and I'm worried about, protection, the way this scheme runs, if I can get into second and third manageable distances and I can give you that run pass look with that outside zone, I can keep 7 guys in the block. I really can, and I can still have this be effective. New Orleans was a great example of that. Now, you can't live on that play after play, but it can be, and this is why I said it can be a great tool to kind of muddle things up. And also, if we run a lot of movement and play action, I hate to say this, but it just kind of muddles everything together. Pass rushers don't like to rush in chaos. Pass rushers want clean alleys.
Clean lines, bend around you, get around you. Yeah. That's the quickest route. Straight line, quickest route.
Yes, they want to bend a corner, or you get these inside guys that want to stand up and they want to do the Aaron Donald jump swims and rips. And if I'm going elephants on parade and you think you're jump swimming me as the right guard, what happens is you run smack dab into my center.
Yeah.
And then, and so you can really kind of wash everything down. You watch it a lot in the play action. Even go back and watch last night. They do it. They just everything ends up just kind of getting lost in the wash.
Yep.
And that's true in the run game, but it's also true in the pass game. So yes, it's a negative that we don't get as many players out in the route. And today, sometimes in the NFL, was we got to have 5 guys out in the route. It doesn't have to be. You can have success running 2-3 man route combos if you pair it with a run look. So whenever you hear an offense say, we need to pair our pass game to our run game, that's what we're talking about. We want everything to look the same, and we can have max protect and get and not pressure our quarterback. And even though we're not getting everyone out in the route, we're convinced that we can scheme the one or two guys we have open. Problem is that if those guys can't get open, now we're screwed, and and that's what happened in New Orleans at the end. But I like this offense when run right. This offense, see the San Francisco 49ers, see the Denver Broncos. This is a really good scheme. And I think it's an easier scheme to perform for an offensive line. Look, if you told me that I could have 5 Pro Bowlers that all weighed 330 and we were going to line up and knock your D in the dirt, great, let's do it.
Yeah.
Hard to find those guys.
Yep.
Those guys are increasingly hard to find. So I think this will be good. I think Seahawks fans are going to like this version of this offense.
Want to get into the NFC West and AFC West, but first I wanted to ask you about Anthony Richardson. The Twitter fan was all about the offensive line, absolutely blew it. It's actually completely on the quarterback. Briefly, can you explain to people why that's on the quarterback and not the right tackle there?
So when we're in an empty concept, right? I only have 5 guys to block. We know it's empty. We're not keeping anyone. We're not chipping. We're empty. I got 5 to block their 5. They present 6 at the line of scrimmage, right? They present 6 as an offensive line. We protect what? Closest threat. So when that linebacker walks up, if you go and watch the right tackle, that linebacker walks up. He has no choice. He has to take the linebacker. That is a universal truth. Because, again, what did we just talk about? The straightest path to the quarterback is what? A straight line. So that lineman is going to sift inside out. And any quarterback knows that when I'm in empty and there's a 6-man pressure, and by the way, they didn't rush. And this is where it drives me crazy. We'll be like, well, they didn't rush 6. They rushed 5. Yes, but they presented a look of 6.
Right.
And when you present a look of 6, you have to adjust. So that right tackle came down. Everyone had to move down, and he had to sift from inside out. Well, by the time he sifted to his linebacker, who ended up dropping, there's not a lineman on earth that can go inside and end up making that. So Anthony Richardson knows that his hot man, and if he's not seeing that linebacker drop, he instantly, the moment he sees that, he should know that the pressure is going to come from my right side. Anthony Richardson pre-snap, anyone that has ever played O-line or quarterback knew it. That pre-snap look, because it wasn't like they were disguising it.
No, they were showing. It was show and tell.
So he looked at it and said, okay, right. If the pressure is going to come, my guys are all going to the left, which means if there's going to be a free rusher, it's here. It's either the linebacker or the defensive end. And honestly, whether it had been either one, he didn't look.
He didn't even look.
He snapped the ball and did this.
That's what's so concerning to me. It's not even that he missed the read. It's that he didn't even know he was supposed to read it. And like you said, they were showing. That's textbook. I mean, it's just like, okay, I have to be aware. Maybe that's not where I want to go with the football, but they're showing a look that dictates that I'm very much aware of what's happening over there. And if that guy's coming, I have an easy dump off to my halfback with a receiver out there for a gain of 7, 8, 9, 10 yards. That is 101. And it's not that they disguised it.
Leave the pocket. You're the most athletic quarterback in the league. Don't stand there with your head turned and take it in the chops.
I don't know if he even had time, but he at least had time to glance. And if you see that guy coming, you have an easy dump off. I mean, it sucks that he got hurt. It looked like a dislocated or broken right pinky.
So they're saying you looked at it. They're saying it was dislocated. They say they popped it back in, and they think he'll be fine in a day or two.
The bigger concern is not that he dislocated the pinky to me. Oh. The bigger concern is that he had zero awareness that's a 101 quarterback play in the league. That's a team saying, we don't think you know how to play the position in the league. Because they showed it. They showed Blitz and like, what's he going to do? And he wasn't even aware. I mean,
so anyone saying that whichever choice that tackle made, it was going to be the wrong choice. I mean, because ultimately, had he stayed on the outside in the linebacker blitz, he would have got hit in the chops. So you can't. That guy was following his rules, and that is on Anthony Richardson. So do not blame the Colts. Do not blame their offensive line. Look, can we just call a spade a spade? Anthony Richardson is not an NFL quarterback right now. He's just not.
He's not.
He wasn't good at Florida. I understand that he had the highest athletic score in the world, and we continue to try to make guys that were great athletes but not good college quarterbacks. And whether you want to go from Jake, I mean, I said this about Jake Locker. Like, I'm like, dude, he's not good.
No,
like, he's just this is the Jalen Milroe thing. Dude, maybe in 3 or 4 years, Jalen Milroe will end up being a good NFL quarterback. But Jalen Milroe struggled to play the position at Alabama at times.
Right.
I mean, a lot of times. And
to me, there's a huge difference, though. There's a huge difference between taking a Jake Locker in the first round, taking an Anthony Richardson in the first round, and going,
and Milroe
heck with it.
Third.
We've got an extra second-round pick. So in the third, why not? Because we've already got our day two guys in the second round.
And you're not asking them to play right away. But when you throw these guys that just literally are ill prepared, you're doing them a disservice. But let's be honest, the Colts have butchered the Anthony Richardson thing from day one. They fell in love with it. They fell in love with the hype. They fell in love with the athleticism. They were kind of desperate. They didn't have another choice, but he has no business. He just has no business right now being an NFL starting quarterback. And last night, I don't want anyone to get hurt, and that stinks, but that's on him. And that is a microcosm of what has been his problem, from not recognizing things, not being able to pick up the game, not playing fast enough, and being injured. That is Anthony Richardson in a heartbeat.
And by the way, the Colts are starting to put mismanagement quarterback pelts on the wall. Andrew Luck and Anthony Richardson. We talk about places you don't want to go, right? Yeah. Like, I know Dion and Shador made a whole thing about not going to the Browns. He's with the Browns, and by the way, he's starting tonight due to injuries, with all the other guys. But we talk about places where quarterbacks go to die. No one really talks about the Colts yet. Yeah. We need to start talking about the Colts, because they've taken two really high, and both of them absolutely butchered. One, no fault of their own, and one
this is probably
was mismanagement.
This probably cost everyone their job. So because Daniel Jones ain't leaning anywhere. So this probably is when you draft a guy like that, I mean, that's usually the way it is in the NFL. When you draft a quarterback and you say, hey, I'm hitching my wagon to him, and it's a disaster, that usually ends up costing you your job. So I would expect next year Anthony Richardson to not be there, and an entirely new staff in Indianapolis. That's just the reality of the NFL.
AFC West, I want to get into the AFC West, and Rashawn Slater, I think, is the obvious place to start. One, it's a really competitive division in which the X factors are probably going to be things like health. And the Chargers were dealt a massive blow this week. Rashawn Slater out for the year. If any team can handle that injury, it's probably the Chargers, who took Joe Alt. So now Joe Alt slides to his natural position, and he's got a few weeks to kind of relearn how to play that in the Chargers system. But remember, they were going to bookend Slater and Alt, and that was supposed to be their big bad duo. Now Alt slides into his normal spot. Now you're playing a swing tackle at the other place. But if any team could handle it, maybe it's the Chargers. I don't know. That it's a tough blow.
Yeah, anytime you talk about losing a Pro Bowl, All-Pro level tackle, I mean, there's just there's a handful of marquee money positions in the NFL, right? Quarterback, edge rusher, tackle, corner. One of them goes down, stinks. The nice part is, I would rather have. It sounds weird. I'd rather have it happen now than I would week 14. This is the reality of it. People get hurt, and now what do? Do you go out and do you find someone on a scrap heap? Do you find a vet? I'm not just like what you've seen guys like the Tyron Smiths that end up hanging around.
Yeah.
You see the guy that's 35 that is kind of over the hill and is beat up. Who was his name is escaping me. Played for the Eagles for all those years. Great tackle, Peters.
Jason Peters,
Jason Peters, one of the great tackles over the last 20 years. Towards the end of his career, remember, he was that guy. It's like, he's hanging around, and I don't know if he's great for 16 games, but you can find him, put him in a pinch. You can find something. You try some different stuff out there. So, you're right. Harbaugh is a master of this. Again, the schemes that Harbaugh runs, you can mask a lot of things. They're going to be physical. They're going to run the ball. So it's a huge blow in that division because it's so competitive. Look, does it cripple you? I don't know if it cripples you, but in a court of law, and you're trying to make a case for them being a Super Bowl team, that's a damning piece of evidence when Rashawn Slater goes down. There's just no way around it. This is hard. Guys, the Kansas City Chiefs, who have lost 2 Super Bowls because of tackle injuries or inept tackle play. This is a blow. But you're right. If a team can overcome it, Alt, who was really good, moves to the left. You can find a way to muddle it up at right tackle. The scheme you run with Harbaugh, and you're going to be physical, downhill run, protect the O-line like we talked about before. You can kind of mask O-lines with that run game, and you know that's what Harbaugh wants to do. He doesn't want Herbert throwing the ball 55 times a game, right? That's not it. So, yeah, you don't love it, but hey, man, it's the NFL, next man up, and maybe they find a solution here. You got a long time. You got a long time to try to figure out what you want to do there.
Yeah, I think this is the toughest division in football. I really do. The Chiefs, obviously a perennial Super Bowl contender.
Yeah.
The Broncos are figuring things out with Sean Payton. Bo Nix seems to have quickly found his groove, and now he seems to be connecting with Troy Franklin. They already have Cortland Sutton. They drafted RJ Harvey, who I really like as a running back up there. They've got a lot of pieces that you really like. The defense is elite. I mean, that's really the starting point. If the offense is 17th in the league, 15th in the league, that defense is probably 1, 2, or 3.
They're going to be good.
Then you're pretty dang good. The Chargers lose Rashawn Slater, but they've got Jim Harbaugh. They've got Justin Herbert. The offense seems to be figuring things out with Ladd McConkey stepping up. They re-signed Keenan Allen, who's essentially your Cooper Kupp flyer, sort of, right? Like when he's healthy, he's good. If he's not, if he's too old, then whatever. He's our 3rd or 4th receiver, and we're fine with that. I feel bad for the Raiders. I like Geno Smith. I like the weapons they have. Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, I think, is probably the most underrated receiver in the NFL. Jack Besh is a really good story and a really good player. For folks who don't know, his brother died weeks before the Senior Bowl at the Super Bowl function. He was hit by a car someone drove a car through a crowd, and then he caught a touchdown pass, the game-winning touchdown pass in the Super Bowl with, I think, 7 seconds left, and that is the number his brother wore when he was a player. So everyone in their grandma is going to be rooting for Jack Besh. I think their offensive line's improving. There's a lot to like there. If the Raiders were in a different division, I think they could win their division. Unfortunately, they're in the AFC West, where it's going to be really tough, but they're going to be much improved.
Yeah, I just don't see a path forward. And I like Geno Smith. I'm a Geno guy.
Me too.
A lot of people give me crap for it, but I think Geno is better than what people give him credit for. But the Raiders are going nowhere. I mean,
I disagree.
They're going nowhere. That thing is going nowhere. The Pete Carroll thing. I mean, you're going back to the well. How long is Pete Carroll going to be there? And Geno is good.
But I don't think bringing in Pete Carroll was about being good right away. I think Pete Carroll was about getting an adult in the room.
Yes,
they needed adults in the room.
You're trying to stabilize things, but and so maybe this pays dividends years down the road. But dude, they are so far, in my opinion, from being relevant.
I disagree.
In this division, when you're talking about Kansas City, Denver, and the Chargers, the Raiders are a distant 4th. I'm with you. Like if you put them in the AFC South, I'll listen to it because I don't think there's a whole lot going on in there. Or NFC South again. Atlanta, New Orleans, Tampa, Carolina. But you put them in
they're competing in that division.
Yes, but you put them in this division, and this is the division they're in. They are nowhere near. I think any of those teams, and the fact that you had to bring in a coach that no one else wanted and that's in his 70s because you need an adult in a room. You can't tell me that you're so dysfunctional that you're leaning on Tom Brady and Pete Carroll to come in. I mean, it's a Band-Aid. And again, maybe I'm wrong. This is maybe 2, 3. This is Bill Belichick down at North Carolina. If you think that North Carolina,
I don't think so. I think it's different.
I don't. I really don't. I think Pete can sit there and chomp his gum all he wants. But I thought the Raiders last night, again, he didn't play everybody, but I don't consider the Raiders are a real team anywhere in that division. I think that's a 3-team division race, and the Raiders to me are an afterthought. And until the Raiders prove to me that they are adults and that they're competent, I just don't give them as much credit.
I hear you. I just think they're a pesky 4th. If they're your fourth, and that's similar in some ways to the NFC West with the Arizona Cardinals, where I don't know if I trust everything there, but I like some of the pieces enough that if you play them on the right night, they can beat you. And with the Raiders, their secondary is so bad, they do need to bring in some bodies there because they could have the worst secondary in the league or one of. If they can patch some of that up, I think they've got a chance to be a sneaky 7-8 win team. In the AFC West, that's not good enough. That dog don't hunt. But I think we're not giving the Raiders enough credit. I think you're not giving the Raiders enough credit. I like some of the pieces. I really do. I think that O-line looked way better in the second half of the year. Geno Smith is a massive upgrade over what they had last year. Jacoby Myers is good. Brock Bowers year 2. They're going to really run the football with Genty. They've got a pair of good tight ends with Michael Mayer, who's fine. They overdrafted him, but he's fine. Max Crosby's one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. There are some pieces, and I think when you look at that team and you just say, well, let's dismiss, like for folks who would just say, we're dismissing the Raiders. No way. I think you're going to see a much better product from the Raiders. And I don't think one preseason game in which Geno Smith played one series really defines that. But the Chiefs win. By the way, I think the Chiefs win the division. And I think that goes almost without saying.
Well, the stinking Chiefs, right? So they get Josh Simmons, who's the tackle at Ohio State who blew out his knee.
That's such a steal. He is so good. Can we just wait? Can we just put a pin in this for a second? Yeah. He would have been offensive tackle. He would have been in the discussion of OT1 in this draft. Yeah. He's legitimately that good. He was a potential top 5 pick. He hurt his knee against Oregon early in the year, middle of the year, whatever. Yeah. And everyone seemed to go, well, he's hurt. Yeah, but again, you talk about it. Premium positions. If you can take a flyer in the late first on a guy who, by all accounts, his knee was structurally going to be okay if he got healthy, and you get him, you gave the Chiefs an absolute gift. The two teams that seem to every year get those gifts in the draft where you're like, you got to be kidding me, are the Ravens and the Chiefs. Every year we watch drafts and go, you guys let the Ravens get that guy? Are you kidding? Yeah. Kyle Hamilton is a perfect example. And that was the case with the Chiefs. Josh Simmons, I think, is a multi-time Pro Bowler. I think
they're saying at camp from that they're like day one, dude. We've got an All Pro, and it pisses me off because damn it, I am not a Chiefs guy. I just need the Chiefs to not win more Super Bowls. I just do. I need them out of. I need Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes out of my life. I can't handle any more commercials. And so when I read that Josh Simmons has stepped in from day one and looks like an All Pro, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? So yes, the Chiefs are going nowhere, and I'm bullish on Denver. I am interested to see because I think some of the Bo Nix stuff. I don't look. We do this with young quarterbacks a lot that show some flashes where we get ahead of ourselves, and so I'm not buying Bo at times. Last year it was bad. There was bad Bo. There was good Bo. And I think he was helped a lot out by scheme. And I think he really kind of came into his own towards the end of the year. But now we're going into year 2, and I'm hearing about, he's Drew Brees, and he's talking to him. And there's just a lot of Bo Nix stuff right now. And I don't know. I don't know if Bo Nix is that guy. I think Bo Nix is a guy. I think Bo Nix is a starting quarterback. I think he's proved that. But in a division with Patrick Mahomes, in a division with Justin Herbert, I'm just not ready to fully say that Bo Nix is there. But if Bo is that guy and takes a big step in year 2 and kind of has that breakout year, when I look at roster construction and give all the credit in the world to Peyton and Denver, because they took a mess from a couple years ago, and they have built 2 elite lines. They built a nasty defense, and they got a little something going on. Denver to me is. That's a team that I think is one of the more intriguing teams in the NFL that I am very excited about. I don't think they can beat Kansas City. I don't think anyone can beat Kansas City. I mean, Mahomes has been a starter for 7 years, and they've been in the AFC title game 7 years. So
it's ridiculous. It's the best stat in the NFL right now.
Yeah, until someone stops Darth Vader over there, I'm not interested in picking anyone other than Kansas City. But remember last year, Denver had them beat. Denver had them beat, and remember that that was, and the stupid field goal, the penalty, and Denver had them. So I'm intrigued. That's all I'll say. That's if I had to give my 3 most intriguing teams, the Denver Broncos are on there, and I think that is going to be a really, really fun division to watch. I think both of these out west, because I can say the same thing about the NFC West.
From a really
Go ahead. Really competitive divisions. There's not a bad team. And I'm not saying I dismiss the Raiders. The Raiders aren't a bad team, although they won, like 3 games last year, so maybe they are. I'm not saying they're bad. There isn't a bad team in the NFC West, and there may be one bad team in the AFC West.
See, I think the AFC West is hyper competitive, where in different divisions, if you stacked it right, there's a chance all 4 of those teams are playoff teams. I think the NFC West is maybe the most unpredictable division. And some of that is competitiveness, and some of that is massive question marks. And we can go down the list. The Seahawks, by all accounts, stripped their offense bare and is rebuilding it. Usually, when you give away or your quarterback walks, you lose your best 2 receivers, or your 2 of your 3 receivers. You lose your tight end. You're have questions along your offensive line. Usually, when that's the case, you take a step back. Doesn't mean they're going to, but usually that's what happens. The Seahawks have a great defense, though. So who knows? The Niners, they finally paid their quarterback. They've got wide receiver injuries. They've got a young defensive line. The Rams look great, but Matthew Stafford has a back injury that is lingering. And the Cardinals are just going to Cardinal. You like them? They're one of those teams that, like, they win games sometimes. You go, they did what? Kyler Murray threw for what? And then other weeks where you go, okay, there they are. There's the Cardinals we know and don't love. I don't know what to make of them. I think they can beat anybody on any given week almost. I don't think they can beat the premier teams, but they can certainly beat anybody in the NFC West on any given day. But I also could see them losing to the Bears by 2 scores in the middle of the season. I don't know if they play the Bears, but losing those kind of games, you're like, what the heck happened here? When that's the case in a division, when everybody's bringing questions to the table, it sure feels like it's a difficult division to predict.
Well, and the thing about I want to believe in the Cardinals. I do.
Why? Why do you want to believe in the Cardinals?
Because I think they have. I love their O-line. I think it's one of the better O-lines in football. I think they're doing a nice job of building a defense. I think Gannon's done a nice job down there. I mean, I look at it and I see some. Remember you were talking about the Raiders. That's the way I feel about the Cardinals. I think the way you find someone that looks at you the way Andrew Nemec looks at the Raiders, and I guess that's my Cardinals. Like I dismiss the Raiders like whatever, and I feel that way. But I look at Arizona. I'm like I can make a case that there's something there. But I swear to God, in November every year it's the same thing. Like last year, right? They win like 5 or 6. They beat the Niners, they beat the Chargers, right? They beat the Dolphins, the Bears, and then they go into that bye week, and you're like, oh, remember that? Like
those pesky Cardinals,
pesky Cardinals, they got a little something coming. Lose to Seattle, lose to Minnesota, lose to Seattle, lose to Carolina.
But that's who they are.
And if they could ever find, I don't know, does Kyler Murray, like, is there just not enough in his little body? Like he needs like a booster seat for the second half of the season. Like
if Call of Duty comes out in the middle of the year, or if he just gets wear and tear, and that's been the thing, man. He's a smaller quarterback. Week 6, 7, 8, he starts to get banged up. He's not as dynamic, and the supporting cast around him so far has not been good enough to carry them. The James Conner, Trey McBride, and then Marvin Harrison Jr. not figuring it out in year 1. That wasn't good enough to get them over the hump when he's banged up. By all accounts, Marvin Harrison Jr., he says it's just his diet. It might be something else. He's gained a ton of muscle mass. I mean, he went from being kind of a skinny dude to he is jacked. So does he take a step forward? Trey McBride's great. The supporting cast, as you mentioned, the offensive line is good. And then Kyler Murray, it comes down to health. When Kyler stays healthy, they're good. The problem is he never stays healthy. There's always something midway through the year.
Yeah, I want to, and maybe that's ultimately what holds me back is I want to believe in Arizona, and I don't really believe in Kyler Murray. I believe in the idea of Kyler Murray, but dude, we're not talking about a guy that's spent 2 years in the league now. We're going into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is year 7 for Kyler Murray. And at some point, like you said, maybe this is, shame on me. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 7 times, shame on me. I listen to him and he tries to say the right things, but I wonder if at some point Arizona is going to have to take a look in the mirror, because I do think what Arizona's building on defense and what they're building on offense, I do like the pieces. I think Jonathan Gannon was a good hire there. I think to me I think he was the right guy, and it's going to sound weird because you're paying him all that money. But I think Kyler Murray, unfortunately, may be that quarterback that makes tier 1 money and might be more bottom tier 2. I mean, he's not tier 3, but he's not at the top of tier 2. He's not, especially when you talk about availability. So you see, now I was all fired up about Arizona, and then you made me like take a 30,000-foot view and take a step back, and now I'm like, ah.
See, that's my job, man. I just push back a little bit. The Rams, to me, are the team in the NFL who has the biggest variance of where they could be. If they stay, it comes down to Matthew Stafford, right? I love the defense. We all love the defense. The defense is going to be really good.
It's a Super Bowl team, and Matthew Stafford is healthy.
They're so good that Aaron Donald is joking about coming back. Now, he's not going to, but that's how good the defense is. He's like, watching these guys, it makes me want to come back. They're good, and they're going to be good. The offense it's a Sean McVay offense with Matthew Stafford at the helm. They're dynamic. Kyron Williams is back. They got Puka Nacua. They brought in a tight end in Terrence Ferguson that they seem to be relatively happy with, although I thought Terrence Ferguson was a 4th or 5th round pick. I really like what I'm seeing from the Rams. And so because of that, healthy, starting week 1, they're a Super Bowl contender, especially in the NFC where there's no proven guy. If Stafford gets hurt, and they go to Jimmy Garoppolo, they could finish 4th in the division if your Cardinals are who you think the Cardinals are. They have the biggest variance, and that's not taking a shot at the Rams, because I think right now you'd say they're a sneaky Super Bowl contender.
Yes.
I just really, really worried about Matthew Stafford already nursing a back injury that's not going to get better playing NFL football.
Well, it's like when they used to have Tim Duncan would be out of games, and under the injury report, Greg Popovich would put old, and that's my fear. Like, the Rams again, much like Denver, we talked about. You can turn over rosters in a short period of time. The Rams went all in, won a Super Bowl, and then fell apart, and in a matter of 2.5 years, they pivoted and built one of the best young defenses in the NFL. And they just hit on guys from Fisk and Kobe Turner and Young. And I mean,
Jared Verse,
who's just an absolute dude. Omar Spates, who, we've seen out of Oregon State and then via LSU. Just the guys they draft it works. And they rebuilt an O-line. They find Kyron Williams in the 4th or 5th round. They just signed him. They bring in a guy, Blake Corum, who you're hearing positive things about. Like, they're just, Puka Nacua goes, I think, in the 5th or 6th round, and turns out when he's healthy, he's an absolute killer. They moved on from a lot of the kind of the bad contracts, and we talked about with the Niners. You're one play away from winning 2 Super Bowls with San Francisco. People forget. As good as Philadelphia was, and when we look at Philly, they're the best team in the NFC. The Rams had the Eagles beat.
Yes.
The Rams, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say it was Higbee. I think it was their tight end. It was Tyler Higbee was wide open to win the game with 20-something seconds left. The game was over. And Matthew Stafford had him wide open, and Jalen Carter blew through the line and made a play. I mean, Jalen Carter saved the Philadelphia season, but we are one damn right guards. They're one right guard block. If that right guard just falls down and stumbles, if he just reaches up and kicks Jalen Carter as he goes by, that's a touchdown pass to Higbee, and the Rams are going to the Super Bowl.
Yes.
That's how close the Rams were. And so we talk about how good Philadelphia is. I think as long as Stafford stays healthy, this is a better version of that Rams team that had Philadelphia. They had them dead to rights. And so I'm very high on the Rams. It's just, you're right. It just comes down to, can old ass Matthew Stafford do something? Which is why I was wondering maybe in the offseason if the Rams were going to pivot, with between Geno and Sam Darnold, was out there. I just, McVay and the Rams are not shy about taking a big swing. And I was interested if they thought, hey, we're one player away. And by the way, we're one player away maybe for the next 3 or 4 years You wonder if after this season, if you just have to move on and you have to find something different, because the roster in Stafford right now, it's like, here's the roster, like our timeline. You know, he's talking about like in the NBA timelines. Yeah. The Rams timeline is here, and Matthew Stafford is here. I feel like somehow you have to find a way to shrink that gap.
Yeah, they love Stafford though, and Robert Mays of The Athletic talked about this, and I thought it was a great point. When he had Jared Goff, McVay was a young head coach, and he was very much like Kyle Shanahan, the paint by numbers thing, right? And they move on from Goff. Goff wants to freelance a little bit because he's talented. He's not amazing, but he's talented. So he wants to freelance a little bit. That kind of rubs McVay the wrong way. Not that they had a frosty relationship, but just he wants a paint by numbers guy, the ultimate paint by numbers guy. So he brings in Stafford. Stafford's so talented that even with the paint by numbers stuff, Stafford starts freewheeling a little bit and having a lot of success, to the point that McVay finally lets his hands off the wheel a little bit and is like, okay, it's still my system, but I trust you to freelance. That was a level of growth from a head coach in Sean McVay that he didn't allow with Goff, and then Goff was allowed to do that in Detroit, and he took a step forward. But they bring in Stafford, and because Stafford was the guy that opened McVay up and has so much incredible raw talent and ability in his arm, McVay trusted him, and it allowed him to grow. So he's probably going to hang on to Stafford longer than maybe most head coaches would, because he's an offensive guru who got a quarterback who allowed him to expand. And I think if we're talking about the difference between McVay and Shanahan, I think Shanahan still very much wants paint by numbers. And he loves Brock Purdy, but it's because Brock Purdy is his Jared Goff, but disciplined. Yes. Goff tried to freelance a little bit. Purdy mostly doesn't. He can scramble a little bit and make some plays and do some of that stuff. But the reason Shanahan loves him is like, if I call a play, he's going to run that play. And he's athletic enough to kind of buy some time and do that stuff. Stafford with McVay is different. That's the same approach that McVay wanted to have. Paint by numbers with the ultimate arm. And Stafford went, I can actually kind of freewheel and do some stuff, not athletically, but just with pure arm talent. And McVay went, okay, this is a marriage made in heaven. So it's interesting in the evolution of McVay. He's going to hang on to Stafford as long as he can, because he kind of helped him grow as a coach and help grow his offense. San Francisco, different story. Shanahan's still doing the paint by numbers thing with a Brock Purdy, who we all agree is tier 2. You want to call him the 7th best quarterback in the league? You want to call him the 13th best quarterback in the league? Don't care. He can win you. He can be the quarterback for you and win a Super Bowl with an effective 100%. Offense. He can't win you a Super Bowl. He's not Mahomes. He's not Burrow. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Josh Allen. But he is firmly in that he's a starter. He can have Pro Bowl seasons, and we can win a Super Bowl with him. The problem is they're a little banged up at receiver, and they're really, really young on defense.
Yeah, I think that's all spot on. We get into this. It's like we all want Patrick Mahomes, and we all want Aaron Donald, and we all want Jerry Rice. Well, the truth of the matter is those guys don't exist. So you make do with what you got, right? Brock Purdy for the Niners, is he perfect? No. But, Niner fan that's pissy, well, who do you want if it's not Brock Purdy? And maybe that's the case. I can sit here and say Matthew Stafford's, Trey Lance. Yeah, he looked great in the one game. Like, I can sit here and say, man, is it time to look somewhere else for Matthew Stafford? And that's part of me, again, doing where would you like to go if it's not Matthew Stafford? So there's very few players in this league that are perfect. But you make do with what you have, and both of those teams like their quarterbacks for different reasons. But yes,
when it comes to the Niners, I'm a little worried. I'll be honest, and folks know that's the team I followed and watched the most. They were really reliant in that first joint practice on Christian McCaffrey when things broke down. That's my fear. Is that the interior is not great. They're over-reliant on dump-offs to McCaffrey. They overrun him. Shanahan does tend to fall in love with his weapons and kind of overfeed him. He did that with Debo in the year that Debo was so good. And I don't know that like hurt his career long-term, but it sure seems like Debo's had a hard time being fully healthy since then. He gets a weapon that he really loves, and it's like, I'm going to hit weapon X. It's button mashing, right? And you can't do that with McCaffrey anymore. You probably can't. You probably can't do that with George Kittle anymore. And then Juwan Jennings is holding out / has a calf injury. Ricky Pearsall is young. He's got potential, but he's kind of battling a hammy, and Ayuk's out. There's just a lot to be worried about where you go, man, this feels like deja vu all over again?
Well, it feels to me like the Niners need to be in the window that the Rams were a couple years ago, and that's the pivot. And I think you saw that. A lot of the guys, the Hufungos and the Greenlaws, and a lot of those guys are shed, and it's time for you need this draft class, and you got it with Pooney last year. You need the CJ West, you need the Michael Williams, you need the Ricky Pearsalls. That next group. So last year's draft, this year's draft, and next year's draft. I don't think this is a contending team. I don't. I think it's going to be a playoff team. I don't think it's a Super Bowl team. But the Rams are a great example of you can turn this. The Denver Broncos in a 2 to 3 year cycle, when done right, you can revamp everything. And I think San Francisco's just in a little bit of that weird. I think it's year 2 of a pivot, and you got to hit. And then next year, if you hit again, I think San Francisco can be back. But I think this is it's not going to be. I don't think it's a necessarily a down year. I think it's a pivot year. I do think there's a ceiling on where the Niners go.
Wouldn't the perfect poetry of this, the perfect ending of this, the full circle moment of this be them losing to the Packers in the divisional round? A team they just abused forever. And it's like, okay, yeah, the Packers are kind of ascending. Jordan Love's good. They've got a young nucleus. They bolstered their defense. Now you lose to the Pack. That kind of feels like the Niners losing in the division round to the Packers. Seems like the exact ending you'd say, that's kind of what you get when you're in this spot. That's kind of how I see them.
And remember, and they even said, they talked about shedding all that payroll. And I mean, they're telling you, they're like, look, the Ravens do this, the Steelers do this, good franchise do this. You don't have your best roster every single year. It's impossible. In the salary cap era, and with injuries and guys getting older, you're going to go through different variations where you kind of have to pivot and you have to turn. And there's some years where you're not rolling out the very best team that you've had during this run. But that's what good teams do to stay relevant for 10 years, as opposed to being, that you see it where the Falcons or the Panthers or some of the Cardinals make a Super Bowl, and then you don't hear from them again for 15 years. That's the difference between flash in the pan, one-off teams. The Jacksonville Jaguars go to an AFC title game or something with Blake Bortles, and you're like, good luck. I'll never hear from you again. Versus the Ravens and the Niners and teams like that, and this version of the Rams and the Eagles. It just, they kind of turn stuff over, and here we are. And a couple of years you win 9 games, and miss the playoffs, and then a year later you look up and you're like, oh my God, look at this Rams defense. This thing is ridiculous. Yep. You're like, dude, this team is hot, and you're like, oh God, we're back in the Super Bowl window.
I really like going up north. I really like the Seahawks defense. Absolutely loaded. It's a retooled offense. They kind of did on offense what the 49ers are trying to do on defense. Yes. Add young pieces, kind of regroup, hit a reset, move on from some key names. Generally that recipe doesn't have the highest ceiling in year 1, but there, like you said, there are times where you kind of you got to eat your vegetables. You got to develop your youth. What's the ceiling for this team? What's the floor for this team? Where do you see the Seahawks team landing? Because it feels like great year, they finished second in the NFC West. Not great year, they finished third in the NFC West. Wheels totally fall off, and the Cardinals are better. They could finish fourth. I just don't see them winning the division this year, even as good as the defense is, but maybe that's being pessimistic.
Well, the Seahawks every year, the last couple of years, are 9 wins, and they're a game away from the playoffs. So if you ask me what the floor is, it's that. Dude, they're not going to win 6 or 7 games. They don't. That's just not the way this team operates. And this is a better version of the last 2 years, where I think if I'm not mistaken, I think both years they've won 9 games. I'd have to look it up, but they're right in that 8-9 win range. And last year was what they needed help in that last game of the year, didn't get it, and so they don't go. So this is what they are. That's the floor. Ceiling, it's not a Super Bowl team. This offense, right, like you said, you don't peel off your 2 best receivers, your best tight end. You don't change quarterbacks. Like that's in your offensive line last year. I think PFF, I believe they had him as the 31st worst offensive line in the NFL. And no offense to Lucas and Cross, we act like Charles Cross is like this Pro Bowl tackle. I thought last year he actually had a regression year for Seattle. So there's questions all along this offensive line. So no, the ceiling is. I guess the ceiling would be to win the division. I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to be competitive. So to me, the ceiling is win the division, more than likely a wild card team, and maybe you can win a playoff game. And then, like you said, eat your vegetables this year with your offense. The defense continues to grow and get nasty. And then maybe next year, everyone kind of grows up a little bit and the offense matures another year. But I can't see this many question marks on an offense because, let's be honest, it's still an offensive league. You can play defense all you want. You got to score points. And I'm not certain that Sam Darnold and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp, I'm 31, 32 years old, and that offensive line, I like him, but again, Clint Kubiak isn't exactly Sean McVay coming in. So yeah, temporary expectations. Playoffs. I think this should be a playoff team. That should be the expectation. Playoffs. Hopefully, win a playoff game. But let's be realistic. You're not one of the elite teams in the NFL.
The big thing for me, the X factor for me, is Sam Darnold with Kevin O'Connell and all those weapons looked pretty good until he didn't. Clint Kubiak is not Kevin O'Connell. Let's call a spade a spade. He does some good things. He's got some good tricks up his sleeve. He's not a Kevin O'Connell. These weapons, and I like Jackson Smith and Jigba. I like a young Elijah Arroyo, Cooper Kupp when healthy, solid. I like the running backs. It's not the Vikings' weapons in terms of the passing game. It's not. No. So Sam Darnold, and by the way, the offensive line, not as good as now. Could be better than it was last year, but not as good as the Vikings. So Darnold, by all accounts, by everyone's account right now, is entering a worse situation than he was in last year. And the worst of Sam Darnold is Sixth Sense. He's seeing ghosts, right? So that's the X factor, is can Darnold hold up? Will Clint Kubiak's system kind of handle him in kid gloves enough and keep him in bubble wrap enough that the offense can be, middle of the pack. And then the defense could be a top 3 or 4 unit. I love their front. Devin Witherspoon is a stud. Reek Woolen is a big physical corner. Eamon Wari is huge. I mean, they've got some really cool pieces in that secondary.
Yep.
Julian Love's a nice veteran piece. If it all comes together, they'd need things to break their way in the NFC West to win the division, but I could see it. I could also see the offense, especially with an injury to one of those tackles, and they've been injured a lot. I could see it. I could see it getting ugly with Darnold quick, and that would be a pretty big problem. So that's kind of where I see the Seahawks. There's our NFC West, AFC West preview. This is the West Coast Bias. It's episode 6. We will be back Monday, and we will go over all the preseason action. Obviously, the Niners have a game. There's a whole slate of preseason action. And then later in the week, we will jump into college football again. So if you're a Duck fan, if you're a Husky fan, Beaver fan, Trojan, Bruin, we will give you a taste next week. But right now, with it being preseason week 1, that's our focus right now on the West Coast. Subscribe to the West Coast Bias wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, you can watch us on YouTube. Spotify, you can watch or listen to us because they have a video option. He's Jason Suke and Nemec. I'm Andrew Nemec. Thanks, Suke, and thank you everyone for listening.
See you next week.